I'm going to share with you some experiences that I've come through this past year. These experiences are significant and they are extremely heavy, so just brace yourself as you listen to something quite unexpected. I'm going to talk a little bit about the why of why I'm doing this in the first place. I'm going to carry on with the court case that I was involved in this past year, the judgment that came from it, the lessons that I've learned, and the decision that is before you as you listen to this from me today. I've been meaning to share this with you. I've wanted to share this with you for a whole year, this whole past year, but due to strict restrictions from the court, I've not been able to discuss or disclose any of the following. But the why for me is really quite simple. On this platform I talk about integrity and why integrity is important, living with integrity, especially integrity for young men. This is part of my process. This is part of my commitment to those I want to connect with you here on this platform. I consider that I'm asking for a lot. I'm asking for a lot when I engage with you guys. As I share my content with you, I have an agenda. I have an ambition of what I want to accomplish. And one of those is to gain trust with you. I want to win your hearts. I want to win your minds. I basically want to develop influence with the ideas that I'm proposing, the ways that we could live and experience this life. These are some big things that I'm asking from you guys. And so part of my commitment with integrity when asking for these significant things from you, the trust, the influence of your mind, your hearts, is also to make sure that you have all the information you know so that you can make the best decision for if we are well suited to travel this path together, or if perhaps there are things that we are so different on that you don't feel we are a good match. For my part, I take rejection really well. In fact, I really honor when people say no because it's their way of saying what they need for themselves. I don't take that personally. So please don't feel like it's going to hurt me or affect me adversely if you decide at the end of this video that perhaps we're not well suited. I just want to say at this outset, thank you for following me. Thank you for coming along this far, and I totally understand. I don't fault you at all. I highly value that you're able to have access to your no and to do the things that you feel are compelling. So that's a bit about the why. For why I'm doing this. I'm just following a list of notes here because I want to stay on point, and so I'm just going to keep to them. I'm never without my handy notepad because it really helps me when I get the thoughts out to process them. And so let me get into the court case that I was involved in for this past year. Never thought I'd ever be in court having charges laid against me, but that's exactly what happened this past year. Due to the nature of this case, I'm going to mention this a couple of times, there is a strict publication ban because minors are involved, and so I can't get into the specifics of the case, and I will not get into the specifics of the case out of respect and protection of the minor that this court case had to do with, but the ramifications of it were very difficult and they were far-reaching. So this started last April. Last April I got a phone call and I was basically asked not to have any connection with any kids, including my own, as they were checking into some things in the mix there. And of course I was extremely surprised and confused. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I said, sure, I'll wait because I definitely wanted to get to the bottom of this. And about a month later, they called back and they said that they're formally bringing charges against me on the account of inappropriately touching a minor. And so they brought me in for interrogation and I went through the whole process and they formally charged me. Again, I can't go into the specifics of the case, but it was far-reaching until the court dates had been set and until the whole trial is over. I was forbidden to be around any kids, including my own, which was extremely difficult. And that trial date was set a year from, like about a year from when the charges first formally brought against me. I'm going to talk in a little bit about some of the lessons I learned, but I just want to get through to the results of that trial. That trial happened this past April, and I attended all of the dates there. I took some time off work to attend them. The evidence was brought against me. I was put on the stand. I testified. And then at the end of the 3-day trial, the judge put on hold the verdict of his findings for another couple of months. So we went back again. When I say we, it was me and my closest group of friends whom I was permitted to confide in. So we went back in the middle of July this year, 2023. And after the judge went thoroughly through the whole case and the evidence that had been brought up against me, at the very end of it all, he told me to stand up and he said, "Mr. Astras, on account of all of these charges, I find you not guilty of any of them." I mean, they never were believable in the first place, but it was an experience that I've had to go through this whole thing this past year. And so that was the outcome of that trial. And like, again, I just want to say, because of the strict publication ban on this case and out of respect for and the privacy and protection of that minor, I can't even speak to any of the particulars. But if you are asking at this point if I am guilty, if I actually did the things I was being charged of, I'm going to tell you that I did not do any of the things that I was charged with, and it was quite surprising that it even came to this point. But here we are a year later, and we're at this outset here. Let me get a little bit now to the closing part of this video here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the lessons that I've learned along the way through this extremely difficult and challenging year. And they are as follows. One, let me just start off with the human part of my experience. It was the first few weeks of the charges being brought against me that really had me in a low point of uncertainty, of confusion, of fear. I had no idea what this was all about. I thought this was something I could easily clear up by just going in and talking with the police, but one of my friends who's a lawyer strongly encouraged me against it and helped put me in touch with a defense lawyer, and I just entered into this world where it's not the way I communicate. I like getting things out on the table. I like being upfront. This whole year, like I said earlier, I wanted to share with all of y'all some of what had been going on, just because I feel really strongly in my life the importance of being transparent with those I'm connected to, like you guys here who are following me. And so it was extremely difficult to not be allowed to talk about this at all, to not even reference it except for the closest in my circles, and so that was my family and a few friends along the way. So those first few weeks were extremely challenging, to be certain. But after the first couple of weeks, I started to reflect on a few things, and these were the things that not only helped me to survive this past year, but actually to thrive, like in such a way that I knew this was still uncertain, the outcome. I had no guarantee about what was going to happen once the trial came and went and where my setting would be. But the first thing I came to recognize was that life never promised me that it was going to be fair. I was never given this commitment or guarantee that I'm going to go through life without having any issues or struggles. Now, there is a difference in the struggles that we experience along the way, yes. Some are more challenging than others. I've already shared about some of my other challenges that I've had to go through, things that I've been responsible for, things like breaking my marriage because I was unfaithful to my wife, and breaking lots of trust with people because I'd been living dishonestly for a lifetime. These are things that I acknowledge and have come to be really transparent about, even as I've processed them and grown to be a better version of myself. I'm not who I once was. I know for some of you, you may believe once a cheater, you're always a cheater and you're always going to be stuck in that mode. And while I get that sentiment and maybe where it may come from. I totally disagree, because I believe that as human beings, we are wired to become better. We can become better. And that's something I've held on to tenaciously in my lifetime, and saying, how can I be a better version of me? How can I account for the things that I messed up along the way? How can I account for the things that I fumbled along the way? And how can I come to experience what it's like to live in this zone where we can have a better expectation of what it means to exist and who we are. And so that's what I've been focusing on these past few years. And so this is what really helped me, is reflecting that even though life never promised me fairness, and this is like one of those things where I'm falsely being accused of things I've never done in the most heinous of ways, like harming a kid this way. Like, I've worked with kids for decades, and I've taught and put together policies and led volunteers in how to be safe around kids. And the irony of this happening, it just brought home that fact that I was never promised fairness. But here's the thing, even though life never promised me that it was going to be fair, the real question is, how am I going to respond in the midst of unfair settings? How am I going to respond when life dishes out its share of unfairness, if we can put it that way? And for me, a really important part as I faced this whole discombobulating, confusing experience of being charged falsely and going through this whole process with uncertainty as my future for a good year, what came about was I wanted to ensure that I don't buy into any resentment or anger or animosity because of this unhappy scenario. I wanted to make sure that the space in my heart, the space in my mind, was carefully being protected from doing the deep dive into, I'm gonna get my revenge, I'm gonna like lash out. I didn't want any of that energy at all. In fact, what I did want was the exact opposite, and that was that I was gonna give the benefit of the doubt to all parties. I was gonna believe the best of all these individuals who were engaged, especially those who were against me. I was not gonna get angry or frustrated with them. I was going to commit in such a strong way to ensuring that the space in my heart and my mind was one that was facilitated with optimistic hope that this was going to work out. Even if at the end of all this, knowing my own innocence, that I was still found guilty, I still wasn't going to relinquish this commitment, that I'm still going to respond by way of ensuring that the space in my heart and my mind was filled with care and love and hope, and giving the benefit of the doubt. That was really important. I wanted to ensure that in no way was I ever going to start getting resentment and anger towards these individuals who had affected my life in such a drastic way for this past year. Secondly, is that the world, it's going to tell its story. This is one of those stories that just by mere mention of it, I'm just going to move over so I can still be in the sun so you guys can see me okay here. I hope you don't mind me just shuffling you along the way. There we go. So anyway, the sun is setting here, and I just want to still be in the final light of it because I'm still going to miss this season. But secondly was this element where at some point years back, when I decided to shift and commit myself to living with integrity, I knew at that point that I was going to be transparent about my story, and that there were going to be many people who looked at me and said, you're not worth our time, or you're not worth even being in community at all. And I knew that that was one of the consequences that I may have to endure as I told my truth, especially about how messy of a human being I am and how I'm trying to figure this out. And so telling my truth, I knew, was going to maybe be the closing that way for me socially. It was at that point that I made that an okay thing. I'm just going to keep on moving because the sun is just hustling its way down the hill here, but let me just move over a little bit more this way. There we go. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to move my stuff over as well. I'd made my peace at that time that the world may not want any parts to do with me because they were so reviled by the messiness that I had engaged in and the many hearts that I'd broken and awful things that I'd done. But I was okay with that because I was able to now see myself for me truthfully. And I was at my own starting place saying, I'm not quite where I want to be yet, but this is a good starting place for me to become a better version of me. And I want to embark in this journey. And so it was at that point that I made peace with the fact that the world could write me off and say, we don't want any part to do with you, but I'm okay with that outcome because I'm okay with me. I'm okay with where I'm going and what I'm becoming. And so that was where I learned that. And with this kind of a story where now this is a really like awful charge to have brought against me, I'm okay with the fact that many may not appreciate that part of my story. And I'm okay with embarking forward, especially on the premise that for some of you, it may be that deal breaker where you're saying, we're bouncing out. And I just want to say I acknowledge that, and I bid you well. I don't want to hold you back, and I don't want to appeal for my innocence, because I already know that for me, and I'm quite confident and comfortable with that. And so, yeah, I'm okay with the world telling its story, especially in a way that is to my detriment. That's okay, because it doesn't affect or hurt me. I'm very much aware of what I believe, and I'm very strongly steeped in my own truth, and so that's why I'm quite okay. The sun is definitely like setting on this side, and I'm not going to keep on moving here, so I hope you're okay with seeing me in the shadows or in the shade here. So I'm okay if the world doesn't trust me or believe me or love me. That's totally okay, because those very things I do for myself generously, because I know the integrity in which I live in my heart space and my mind space. This is real life for me. Like, this is for me. I can walk around and know that even in spite of lacking all these things from those around me, I'm good in myself. That's where my clarity of conscience comes from. And so I love me generously. I'm so well satiated with that. I am so grateful that I believe my own story, because it is the truth that I live in. And I trust me because I've been working on me for such a long time. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing and how I'm intentional about it. And so that's really an important part too. Another thing that also helped me navigate through this past year in such a powerful way was I refused to speculate on what the outcome of this whole court case is going to be. To that end, I refused to talk about, I wonder if I'll be found innocent, or I didn't even want to play those games at all. I just made my peace with the worst case scenario, saying, here's the worst case scenario if I'm convicted and I'm put on a list that is offensive, and if I'm behind bars for so many years, like, that's an outcome I am making my peace with, because they can't take away the power that I have. And that power is, again, my clarity of conscience, my clarity of heart. I'm able to, like, basically the way I was seeing it is, worst case scenario, I may be introduced into the penitentiary system, wrongfully, yes, but it may still be an option, again, because I remember my first lesson that the world never promised me fairness, and that could be an extension of that. And even then, I'm still going to protect my heart space. I'm not going to get angry or resentful. In fact, I'm going to keep on the same intention that I've presently been behind bars, influencing there, and bringing that message and hope to those who I'd be sharing cells with, if that was the case. So I refused to speculate on which outcome the trial was going to go. All I knew was I could move forward with confidence, because I knew my own innocence and my own clarity of conscience. That was a given, and so that enabled me to embrace my world full on, while still honoring the restrictions that have been put on me, especially the difficult one of just not having access to my ex and the kids that we co-parented together. That was really challenging, but again, I made my peace with that, saying, hey, this time has been taken from me, but I refuse to let that play the major note in this story. I'm still going to prepare for a time when I can reconnect with them, and also all my other friends and their kids and so on. Another component of this, I know so many of my friends appealed to me, the ones who are in my inner circle. They appealed to me saying, Binyam, please don't ever talk about this, or don't go public about this, because it's the kind of thing where you may not get jobs. It's the kind of thing where people may not want to be friends with you or whatever. And I said, that's the cost of what I committed myself to when I lead with integrity and transparency. Whenever I'm connecting with someone, whenever I'm exchanging that space, I want to be upfront. I want to be upfront so that there's no unpleasant surprises. And so this is why this is a significant thing for me. I don't want to redo history and say, oh, this never happened, and kind of ignore that. I've got a couple of squirrels that are running around here playing. I'm just a little bit distracted. But I never wanted to relinquish my access to being upfront and honest. The reason I'm so free about my story, all the messy parts especially, is because I've made my peace with my contributions, where I've had to do amends and become better, and I've been able to like face myself in the mirror and know that I'm living in the moment and I'm living with integrity. And so this is why I can do this so freely, because I know that there's nothing that I'm sharing, there's nothing that I've experienced that anyone can use against me. I'm free from all of that censure publicly and socially, and so there's no way that I'm ever going to be shamed again. There's no way I'm ever going to be muted or put down that way. And so I really, really value and appreciate that. So I don't revise history. I keep to the truth, even when it doesn't benefit me, even if it means that some of you may be saying, we're parting company from here. I want to honor you as you part company and bless you along your way. I don't hold it against you, and I don't take it personally. This is just what I am doing for me, to be upfront with those of you who are engaged with me, so that you at least know who it is that is endeavoring to gain influence and trust and heart space and mind space as we exchange ideas and transform and become amazing, transformed beings that change the world around us. And finally, the biggest part about all this, I've mentioned it a few times along the way, is I've really been investing in making sure that this experience, this really difficult experience, does not disillusion me, that does not start having me being resentful of those around me, especially those that have done this and brought me into this whole unfortunate loop. There's no anger, there's no animosity, there's no retribution, there's no sense of revenge that I want to get. There's none of that. I have not fed into any of those emotions. That's been really important for me to ensure that I don't move into that space. So critical, because I want to facilitate something else instead. Where this has taken a year of my life in such a way, I've still redeemed this last year by being on purpose and doing what I do and engaging fully and with integrity and with everything on the table. I've been able to pursue that, and I so appreciate that. Furthermore, I've also made sure to reserve space in my heart where there's forgiveness, where there is kindness, where there is patience, where there is forbearance, where there is goodwill, where there is all these good things that I still want to give. I've worked really hard at ensuring that the story in my mind is I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt in all of these scenarios and all these cases that have involved me this way. And so all of this has been really important, because this is how I want to engage with my world. This is so important for me. And so again, the reason I share all this with you, again, is because I have some big asks of you, my dear listener. I have some places I'm going to be going in the future as I continue to create content themed around integrity at the very core, and how we can live with integrity, how we can experience it, how we can grow in it, how we can wrestle with it, how we can practice it. Like, all of this is so important for me. But a huge part of that for me is this exchange with you, where I want to be transparent with you. I want to give you the truth. I want to let you know as much as I can. Like I say, there's only so much I can tell you, but the rest I cannot tell you, because, like I say, it's beyond my scope to do that, and it's also not it's not only my story. I can tell you my part of the story, but I'm also going to protect someone else's and honor that core band that's in place. The big lesson I want to share with you, though, is, for me, living with integrity this past year, especially through this devastating experience that I've been sharing with you, is that it's transformed this scary season. This would have been scary for me once upon a time. It would have been a deal breaker. I would have been totally undone. But because of how I've been able to grow these past few years in establishing and growing in integrity, living with integrity has really enabled me to transform this scary season to one of the most epic experiences. This is like a really, really big thing that's happened to me. I acknowledge that. And I've been able to navigate and come out on the other side with even more purpose, with even more confidence, with even more sureness of what I am trying to accomplish. And this has been so transformative for me. And I feel like I'm even moving more into who I was meant to be. I'm like, this is one of the worst things that could happen, to be certain, but now I've come through it, and I'm like, all right, like, I'm now able to keep going with even more compelling evidence of my message of what it looks like to live with integrity. And so I share all this with you again, one, so that those of you who determine that this is not the space you want to be following along and having me influence you, I guess this is where we part ways. And I want to say thank you again for giving me the time to even listen through all this video and come with me this far. And I want to bless you as you go your way. However, for those of you who are like, hey, this is something else, whatever it is, whether it's inspiring or challenging or encouraging or whatever, and you still want to keep following, I'm more than happy to have you come along with me for this journey. I'm going the long journey here. I make long-term investments, and I like long-term connections, and that's what I'm aiming to do even on this platform with you. My agenda is, as I share my experience, as I share my background, as I share my processes, my ideologies, I want to inspire you to also consider what that looks like for you, especially in the way that it transforms and helps you move into that next zone. And so that's why all of this. So thank you again for sitting with me for the last almost half an hour here. This is a huge one. I've been looking forward to sharing this with you again for a whole year. Like I said, many of my friends said, please don't. And I said, I'll think it over for a year, because I can't talk about it for a year, but at the end of the year, I'm still going to determine and see if this is the way I should go, and this is what I'm committed to. This is what I'm committed to by principle, because, like I said, I want space with you in your hearts and your minds. I want to influence you. I want to inspire you. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But this is part of that accounting that I want you to calibrate with and say, am I the right person for you? And if not, again, I send you with love. If I am, I'm happy to have your company as we keep going forward. I'm going to try and post this video somehow on my YouTube. I'm going to try and post it so that it is like one of the first accessible videos, because it is a really big one. I think the way I'm titling it is the why, the court case, the judgment, the lessons, and the decision. And the decision is basically how are you guys going to respond? Are you going to come along, or are you going to part company? Again, I leave that to you. But again, my heart space, it's clear. I'm doing fine. I'm doing like amazing. I was able to reconnect with my ex and the kids, and that's been so sweet. There's time to redeem there. But again, for me, there's no messy, hard feelings here. This isn't the kind of thing that has done me in. No, I'm a lot more stronger in my resolve to be an even better version of me. And I want to share some of my insights with you as I go along. Once again, thank you. I will see you in the next video. Hopefully, if not, I bid you adieu with love. I'll see you guys on the next time. Bye.